Hello and welcome to On the Road Again, Part 3. Just as you can see in this video, in this section of the video, coming into the village of Bungonia, which has been in the news recently as a result of some. I'll just leave it that it's been in the news recently. It's a very small village. I don't know the population, but there's an old school building in what would have been the principal's residence at one stage. The school has been closed. Not sure for how long, but it's certainly been closed. There's a church. I don't know if there are services held in the church, and it's an Anglican church. It's a little bit out of the town, the eastern edge of the town. There's a community hall, which is the white building that you might have seen on the right-hand side early in the clip, which once a week doubles as a cafe of some sort. I don't know anything about how any of that operates other than just that. I've rode through the village once before, and if I remember, I'll put a link in the description to a couple of videos I made about the village of Bungonia and the Bungonia look down, which I mentioned in the last video. It's a famous look down rather than look out, because it looks down into what I think is the valley of the Shoalhaven River as it makes its way from the tableland down to the coast at Nowra. So the village is, as I said, a fairly small place. I don't know the population. It's about 35 or so k's from Goulburn, east of Goulburn, and I'd imagine that the people who live there do so for the idea of being a little bit out of town and having a bit extra land and the peace and quiet and those sorts of things that go with living in a little village like that. But I would imagine that those who work probably commute to Goulburn each day, which would take them a little over half an hour. The children who live there would probably come into town. Maybe they would go to the primary school at Windelama, but the high schoolers obviously would come into town on the bus and go to, when I say into town, into Goulburn to go to school. I imagine perhaps some of the primary school age children would also do that, but I don't know anything about the people who live out there, so I'm only assuming when I talk about those things. Now, the land on either side of the road here is probably has one of two functions. One is it's just crown land that's native, just bushland that has no function, and the other is that it would be agricultural land, and the agricultural land I imagine would be used for grazing sheep, probably being raised for wool, and also some cattle, which I imagine would be beef cattle. There may be some other farming activities as farmers in this area, like other areas, diversify, but I think mainly the farming activities would be sheep grazing for wool and cattle for beef. You can see places where the road, well, let's talk about the condition of the road here. The good things about it, as you can see, or things that I think are good about it, is first of all that it has markings down the centre. This would be definitely a C-class road, but it still has markings down the centre, and it has markings on the edges. I don't think they're rumble strips. I can't recall from when I was riding on this road if they're those rumble strip things. I think they're just the white lines that are marked on the edge of the road, and it also has those white posts. The ones on the left hand side have the red reflectors, and the ones on the right hand side would have a white reflector. Those red posts, those little posts are either metal or plastic, and they're quite important because at night time in particular they help to show the drivers and riders where the edge of the road is, and because on country roads like this the shoulder is often uneven, it's important to know where the edge of the road is. Now, right at this very moment here, I've gone down a road that I thought would take me through to another village called Tarago, and it would take me through to that village. The road would take me there, but I got down this road, this distance here, whatever it was, and saw that the road ahead was dirt, so I decided to turn around and go back and go a different way. The reason for that is the Can-Am Spider, certainly the RT, is not meant for the dirt road. It's a road tour, and it's meant for the open road and the highway, and it'll manage. If you manage it well and ride it carefully, it'll manage on the dirt road. But it is not. I wouldn't recommend that you ride it on a dirt road, because obviously it has road tyres on it, so it's not meant for the dirt road. But secondly, there's also a problem with I was sort of looking here, deciding whether I'd follow where that blue truck had gone, but I couldn't see far enough ahead, so I correct myself. I'd gone down this road and seen this turn that said Tarago, and gone down the road and then seen it and thought, well, I'll turn around and go back and see what that sign said. I've gone back and seen the sign that says Tarago and thought that I would go down the road where the blue truck had gone, but then wasn't sure what the state of the road was once you got beyond what you could see there. And I thought it perhaps was a dirt road, and as I'm saying, the Can-Am Spider does not like the dirt road very well, because it's got car tyres on it and it's not meant for dirt roads. But there's a second issue with stones. Possibly, it's a possibility, I'm not saying it will happen all the time, but it's a possibility of stones being thrown up by the front wheels and sucked in between the belt and the rear pulley, and they can do some fairly serious damage to the belt if you're not careful, and belts for these bikes are fairly expensive. I don't know what the rated life of the belt on this bike is. I've only got 15,000 on this machine. When I bought it, it had 9,000, so I put about 6,000 in about 15 months or so. So it sort of tells you how often I ride it and how far I ride it. But for a reference point, the Kawasaki Vulcan Voyager that I had before this, it had a belt drive, and when I sold the bike to my son, it had 100,000 kilometres on it and still had the original belt. So the belts do last, and they are a viable alternative. Obviously the best sort of drive is a shaft drive, but the next best option is a belt drive. So we're talking about the state of the road. You can see, as I said, those white posts on either side. They're important for marking the shoulder and marking the edge of the road, because on these country roads the shoulder is not always properly formed. As you can see here, there's not where the white line on the left-hand edge of the road is, and then there's not a lot of road left before you're actually into the dirt. So the shoulder is not always well formed. And so at night time it's handy to just show you, well, this is where the edge of the road is, and when you come to the shoulder, if you're on a two-wheeler, be careful, because the roads can have quite a steep camber to the left and to them to drain the water away, and the shoulders can be quite steep, and also in some places they'll be soft, especially after rain, and you put down the stand and the stand could sink quite a few centimetres into the shoulder. So the road is reasonably well made. In some places you can see there are patches, but I would say overall it's in a much better condition now than it was the last time I rode this road. There had been a lot of heavy rain in late 22, early 23, and lots of regional roads, the smaller country roads rather than the main highways, were badly damaged by floodwater and just by torrential rain, and there were lots of potholes and places where it was unsafe to ride, and there were signs on many of the roads warning you about rough surfaces and so on. So the various councils that are responsible for these roads, I should rephrase that, the various councils in the area have been given money by either the state or federal or both governments to repair these roads, and for the most part they've done a pretty good job. Also there are, where appropriate, signs indicating curves and chevrons indicating the direction the road goes in, and there are guardrails when they're needed, and all of those things I think are important in maintaining a reasonably safe road. When it comes down to it, I suppose one factor is the road is only good as it's only as good as the person who is riding it or driving it, and you are responsible for riding to the road conditions that you see. And you can see here, for example, that there are lots of trees close to the edge of the road, so it makes visibility beyond the curve a little bit more difficult. It also means that there are those sort of dappled light and shadow across the road, and sometimes you could be moving into a shadow or coming out of a shadow, and that makes it hard for motorists, whether they're motorcyclists or motorists in cars, to see you if you've come out of a shadow, depending on the angle of the sun. So if they're driving into the sun, so in other words they're heading west and the sun is going down, and you're coming out driving east and coming out of a shadow, there may be a moment or two where the person coming towards you from the opposite direction, where there's, I wouldn't say their eyesight is blinded, but their vision could be affected by bright light, the need to put their sun visor down, and the fact that you're coming out of a shadow just might make it a little bit more difficult for them to see you. So I'm not advocating, for example, that the council go along or somebody go along and chop all the trees down again on the side of the road to make to make it clearer and make better vision. I'm not saying that they should do that at all. I'm saying is that you have to be aware that this is a factor, and perhaps adjust your riding skills a little bit, and maybe when you're coming around a bend where you can't see a long way in front of you, perhaps slow yourself down a little bit. If you look ahead here to the furthest point you can see, you've got a reasonable viewing distance ahead of you, so you can maintain a reasonable speed. When I'm saying reasonable, I'm probably doing about 80 or 90 kilometres an hour here. And then you see a road curves away around to the left and then down. Your vision isn't, the distance that you can see isn't as great, so there you might, just for your own sake, want to slow down just a tad, maybe 5 or 6 kilometres per hour, just to you get around the bend and have better vision again. You can see for most of this road there's a double line down the centre, which means obviously it's unsafe for overtaking. And that means sometimes that if someone is behind you and you're riding at the speed, like I said, I was riding at probably 80 or 90 kilometres an hour. I think the speed limit may have been 100 on this road, but I'm obviously riding a bit slower than the speed limit because I don't know the road that well, and I'm not in a hurry. I'm just wanting to enjoy a ride, so I don't feel as if I need to go at flat chat. I understand sometimes that people are behind me, and sometimes that they may get a bit frustrated, and where it's possible I would move over to the side of the road and give them the option of passing me without crossing the double lines, but that's not always possible, as I was saying before. As you can see here, there are not a lot of opportunities. The shoulder isn't really wide, and my bike, as I've said before, is a fairly big WOP bike. It's almost as wide at the front as a small hatch, so for me to pull over to the side to allow someone to pass me isn't the same as someone pulling over on a two-wheeler. So things to think about when you're out on a rural road to consider is that the person in front of you may not be as familiar with the road as you are, may not feel as comfortable or as competent riding on that road as you do, because you travel it every day, and given the state of the road and the shoulder and all those sort of things I've just mentioned, they may not feel that all that confident about pulling over to allow you to get past them. So just sort of bear that in mind, and maybe consider it when you're behind someone and you're thinking, why doesn't this person just move over or go a bit faster or whatever. Right here is a pretty good vision. The tree line is back from the road, so it gives you that sense of openness and much more spacious feel about the ride. The trees aren't encroaching upon you, they aren't encroaching upon the road, so you feel as if your vision is a bit better, and you feel as if you can, well, I certainly do anyway, feel as if I can see a bit further ahead, and I'm a little less anxious about what might be coming around the bend and coming out of the shadow of a tree, because the trees are further back from the road. Fortunately, there are some of those yellow signs on the road where it's appropriate to have them, to just warn you about speed advisories going around bends like this, for example, or dips in the road coming up where there are causeways or things like that. And I think it's always important to understand that those signs are there to advise people about the state of the road, and when they get damaged, then people who don't know the road are left in the dark about, well, what's coming up ahead. Is there a dip in the road? Is there a sharp bend? Is there a recommended speed for this curve that I should be riding that I can't see now because the sign's been damaged or something like that? So I guess that's a plea for me to say that things that are put on the side of the road, yellow signs, giveaway signs, chevrons, whatever they are, just leave them alone. Those white posts with their metal or plastic, they're there for a reason and they're very valuable, so rather than bending them over so they're flat to the ground so people can't see them, just leave them alone. And the riders and drivers who come along that road who are not as familiar with it as you might be will get the benefit of them. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the ride and the commentary. If not, I hope you've at least enjoyed the scenery, and I'll be making part 4, or recording the audio for part 4 shortly, and I'll catch up with you when I'm ready to do that. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you again shortly.